All right, so let's talk about the requirements of the actual exam. Now, the 534 exam had these 7 requirements. The 535 exam sort of organized them into 6 requirements. I did some analysis, which is on my blog. A link to this page is attached to this lecture as a link. And actually what Microsoft did is they added a lot of new requirements, and they didn't really take much away. That's the nature of things, I guess. So some of these stuff, including containers, web apps on Linux, SQL Server Stretch Database, Key Vault, DMZ, multi-factor authentication, going down this list. So here's the definitive list of the differences between the 534 and 535 and things were added. There was not much that was taken away, right? So they're no longer talking about Hyper-V or SAML authentication tokens or the SQL Server database TDE. So that's very, very little that's been taken away, and much more has been added. And so this blog post hopefully serves as a good reminder that as you're studying, this is what Microsoft's going to be adding. So if you use this course or use a book or videos, they may not cover some of these things in as great detail as you'd like. Of course, as I go through this course, I'm adding stuff. So we've already got new information about containers, web apps on Linux, and as we go down this list, more and more will be added to the course, Azure Key Vault, etc. And so I'm doing my best to get this updated for you as quickly as possible. Okay? So keep an eye on the educational announcements for that. So going back to the actual requirements, we have the 6 objectives of the exam, and they're sort of neatly organized here in, like I said, compute, platform as a service, data networking, security, and then this sort of miscellaneous bucket. So 25% of the exam, 20-25%, has to do with virtual machines and serverless computing. There's new videos added to the course talking about functions and logic apps, etc. So you're going to have to learn about creating virtual machines, designing them, scaling them, backup and recovery, serverless computing with its functions and logic apps, which are sort of the future paradigm of application design, which translates into microservices, that gets into service fabric, functions, and things like that. Traditional web apps, web API, security, things like that. We're getting less into like high performance computing and compute intensive applications. Azure Batch, I don't know if you're going to see a lot of questions on that, but as we get more into serverless and the scalability and the consumption model for a lot of things that Microsoft's offering, some of these things are not as prominent. We get into databases. Clearly, storing data in the cloud, whether it's with blobs, storage accounts, files, or databases, is a big deal. Microsoft rolled out Cosmos DB earlier this year, and so there's going to be a big push to understand all the different data models that you can have inside of Cosmos DB, the different APIs, and even particularly which API relates to which data model. So out of your traditional storage data, relational databases, things like that are going to be on this exam. Networking, virtual networks, super important. Load balancing, traffic manager, which is a type of load balancer at a global level. Being able to define custom domain names using DNS, DHCP, private and public IP addresses, static and dynamic IP addresses. Application gateway is another type of load balancer, etc. Private networks, express route, and being able to connect to VNets using peering. That'll all be on the test. We're going to talk about security. Security is a huge thing in the modern web and application design world. We've seen some major disasters. Perhaps 2 of the largest hacks in the history of the internet happened in the past 12 months. And so, understanding how to secure your network, getting your applications on the right level of security, blocking out traffic, and etc. Hybrid, now as we talk about security, allowing traffic to come into your corporate network inside the firewall is another risk. So the relay service, which allows you have a web app on the Azure environment to connect to a web service that's running inside your environment. on-premise data gateway, etc. Now we talked about security for networking. Security as a larger concept, right? Multi-factor authentication, Azure Active Directory, B2C and B2B, using those Microsoft, Facebook, Google, Yahoo accounts as third-party providers. Data security, which is data secure at rest and data secure in transit. RBAC has been with this test and with Microsoft for ages in terms of role-based access control. Instead of defining security at the user account level, you create roles and then you assign users to roles. That'll be on the test, and that's already covered in this course. And I've heard that this Operations Management Suite, OMSS, is bigger on the test this past year, so I'm going to have to get into this more, create some more videos around OMSS and Security Center. So absolutely worth digging into this, and maybe if you do want to do some research on this, this will be a good place, because it's clearly it's an important part of the test, but the information is a bit opaque. Closing that up, platform services. Now we got cognitive services, bot service, very interesting. Done some videos on that. Machine learning, all of these concepts of the advanced technologies that's being released, where things that only Facebook and Google used to be able to do, now you can incorporate in your business. Internet of Things. I mean, every device that we own now has an internet connection and puts data back into a cloud somewhere. So knowing this stream analytics, IoT hubs, and what's the difference between that kind of hub and an event hub, etc. Messaging. So when we're designing our serverless apps, we're going to use disconnected methods of communication. So storage queues and service bus, event hubs. Event grid is a new technology that's very important for Azure these days. Media services has always been on this exam. We've got some videos around that. And finally, operations, which is a little bit, we need to understand how monitoring and alerts happen for all the products, right? So at the app level, at the platform level, and even a strategy if you have desired states of configuration, PowerShell, using Chef and Puppet for desired state configuration and automation. So that's a lot. This exam is known to be one of the toughest exams in the Microsoft Azure training suite. And so you can see here that even though it's broken into 6 tiny sections, there are literally 100+ topics that you need to learn. And so that explains why this course is going to be pretty big. But hopefully you can take it one bite at a time, to get into some videos, go do some assignments, learn, process, understand, do some reading with some of the resource links, and then continue on. So just the way you approach this course is one bite at a time, essentially. You can't sit down in a weekend and watch the entire course and expect that you've learned everything. That's my take anyways.